I work in restoration. Your house or business floods, my crew comes in, dries everything up, cleans the baseboard, preps the place, tosses the ruined stuff into a dumpster and hauls it away. We leave the place clean and ready for a fresh coat of paint. I'm usually pretty proud of the work me and my crew does. We do it all, too. Mostly, we have to do flood damage, but there are times where we get called to rich folk homes to remove stains from stone and concrete structures. I've had a museum call for the same. I've made a name for myself, and I'm able to get just about any stain out of any stone. You'd think it's easy or that you could just scrub away a stain, but folks forget that marble isn't solid. It's porous. It sucks in liquid. That's why polish and maintenance are important. I'm not naive though. Plenty of times I get called in for red wine. Yeah, okay. I get it. You were partying with a hooker, she OD'd and cracked her coked out head off a coffee table and suddenly there's a pool of blood on the marble floor of your penthouse. And you can't get out the stain. Worse, the wife is home next weekend. I've done the cleanup enough times to know a few things. Number 1, don't ask stupid questions. Hell, half the time the hooker's fine or would have OD'd anyway with or without the expense of John, so no skin off my nose. And if you're cleaning up the scene before the cops can show up, honestly, that's on them. I have a job to do, and I do it. Number 2, don't remember these people. I'm not some guy who's going to get brought in on some indictment hearing or some tabloid media circus all because I decided to suddenly have a good memory. I do a job like this. I get your address, I show up, I shake your hand, I call you Mr. Smith, then I leave, delete your address, and I carry on with my life. The less I know, the safer I am. That being said, I don't get blood cleanup very often. It's normally innocent stuff. Wine, sewage, floodwater, sometimes human feces. You think it's gross, but it's easier than anything else to clean. The weirdest request? I need to give some context on weird. I had a call to clean up a place after something called a Luna party, which somehow involved a whole lot of menstrual blood and dancing in it. Next time, bring a tarp. That's not my weirdest call. It was a Friday. I don't know why that mattered when I got the call. The secretary was out for lunch as well as the rest of the crew. Rather than let it go to voicemail, I took the phone call. This was my first mistake. M&C Restoration Inc., Fred speaking. Yeah, I'm Fred. There was a pause, then the guy's voice came over, kinda timid.
Yes, hello. I understand from your ad you can remove stains from all sorts of stone. Marble as well?
Yeah, it's kind of our specialty. What sort of stains are we talking about?
Blood.
I've never had someone just come out and say it. I get all the pussyfooting around, sure. Wine, salsa, sangria. Sangria was my favorite considering that blood is in the name. But this guy just out and said it? Plainly? How large of an area? Another pause.
I'd say about maybe 10,000 square foot.
Not the property, I tried to clarify. Just the stain.
Yes, I know.
You need 10,000 square feet of marble, which is stained in blood, cleaned?
Yes.
This time I had to take a moment. How many gallons was that? I thought back to the lunar party thing or whatever, even though it was only a single floor.
I'm sorry. Some context is probably needed.
The voice on the other end continued.
My name is Timothy. I work in antiques. A curator friend of mine referred me to you after you managed to clean her museum steps of some sort of blood that apparently occurred after someone took a nasty fall.
I cleared my throat. Right, right, okay, yes, I'm still trying to process the 10,000 square feet of stained tile.
Is it too much?
I was still a bit dumbfounded.
Let me be frank. The site was the location of a rather bloody massacre some time ago. My colleagues and I have already examined the site in its entirety, and we're looking to begin restoration.
At this point, my concern got overridden by cash. Antiques, historical site, This sounded like a big, fat government contract. Christmas came early for old Freddy. What's the budget for this project of yours?
Time is more of the essence than anything else. We need the site cleared in preparation for other restoration efforts, so as soon as possible would be preferred. Your fee is essentially yours to name. You're literally the only person who I can call on for this task.
Haggling was not this guy's strong suit. It sounded to me like he needed to read Art of the Deal. You're talking about a whole lot of space to clear. 10,000 feet is a whole lot of floor.
It's not all floor. A good portion of it is walls and ceilings.
How high is the ceiling?
About 50 feet?
I was silent again. I was gonna need to rent a scissor lift for that. I thought for a moment and cleared my throat. I'm going to need a whole lot of equipment, materials, and at least 5 guys if you want this job done right and fast.
Of course.
How long has the marble been stained? There was a moment of silence.
By the current timeline, maybe 200? No, wait, what's the current year again?
I wasn't too sure why he was asking, but I figured I shouldn't sound stupid. It's 2018.
350 years, roughly.
I thought for a moment, thinking about how this being the United States, there was no way for there to be a structure like he was talking about. I ignored him and assumed he had to be wrong. Anything over a decade is as set in as it's going to be anyway. I took a breath. I can't do it for less than 30 grand. I figured he'd work on needling the price down, but then he shocked me again.
Understandable. I'm assuming I can ignore a number of taxes and paperwork if I provide a cash payment?
I coughed in shock, nearly swallowed my cigarette. Yes, certainly. Cash? I'm gonna have this job done and it's going to be tax-free? I feel like I just won the lotto. So the job itself comes up. I've got my crew roll into the address. The address has a huge rusted gate, chain on the front, typical of a site you're not allowed to get into. I see a guy standing about 6 foot in a black trench coat, black sunglasses, gloves, black dress shoes and slacks, brown hair and pretty pale. He doesn't say a word. He unlocks the chain on the gate and pulled it off pretty quick. I thought it was a heavier gauge than he made it seem, but I was probably just mistaken, being in a huge truck and not too close to the gate. The guy opens up the gate and walks to the side of the truck. "Fred, yes," he says flatly. I nod, reaching my hand out to him. "You're Tim?" "Timothy, yes." He shakes my hand, firm handshake. His hair is cut short, trim, and proper. "Military?" I ask. He nods, stepping back and pointing down past the gate, motioning with his non-directing hand to move. "Definitely military." So I nod and drive up. I see a huge mansion with white and gray stone steps, old siding falling apart, boarded up windows, messed up, the roof, the entire place looks like it needed to be knocked down, but apparently getting rebuilt was on the docket for today, and I was getting paid not to care. As we unload, Timothy opens up the front doors and knocks them into place. He starts talking loudly. The doors need to be open at all times while you work. There's no ventilation inside. He has a pair of pretty heavy-duty doorstops on each door. From the outside, I cannot see anything inside. Nothing but pitch black. You're going to need lighting, so I hope you brought a generator. I laugh while my crew unloads the trucks and sets up 2 generators, pulling down some cans of gas. This isn't my first rodeo. "So it would seem," says Timothy. Then he walks inside and vanishes into the blackness. I motion for the crew to set up lights, and the first place we go is on either side of the door. He wasn't kidding about needing light. The boards were perfect, and the inside was absolutely dark, like the middle of a moonless night dark. I hear the generator kick on and the lights perk up a second later, and that's when I see a massive white face appear out of the dark with brown drips across it. It's an angelic woman carved expertly out of marble. I swear I can see the pores on her cheeks and the split ends of her long hair. There's a second similar statue about 30 feet to the left, and it's covered in brown stains. I hear one of my guys, Chavez, speak up. My God. That's about when I got the hint that something wasn't right. Chavez spoke up again. Hail Mary, our Father protect us. I picked up Chavez from a day laborer site about 1 year ago. I've been paying him under the table ever since. He's either from Mexico or Honduras. He's a hard worker, so I never bothered to care, and never could ask. This is too much. This place is cursed to high hell. The blood's all over those angel statues. What is this? Chavez was rambling. You see, the reason I never could ask Chavez where he came from was that Chavez doesn't speak a goddamn word of English. Timothy's voice soon echoed across the room, walking over the solid marble in various states of stains and scrapes. I trust this isn't too much for you, or your men. I didn't actually spot where he had come from, but I wasn't paying attention before Chavez got a smack upside the head by one of my full-timers, Pete. Since when the hell can you speak English, Chavez? When the hell did you learn Spanish, Peter? Chavez asked. Timothy seemed agitated. Gentlemen, if we can begin the job now. And he walked past us and outside. I turned to both of my men. Pete, Chavez, shut the fuck up, both of you. We do this job, go home, you all get a good paycheck, okay? No more questions. Let's get moving. This place is cursed, Chavez said before turning around and pulling in the pressure washer and the detergent bottles. I get up in Chavez's face now, certain he can understand me. Then the quicker we get started, the quicker we can get the hell out of here. Understand? Understood, Chavez said, still looking confused. Pete then spoke up. Hey, boss. He focused the flashlight on a portion of the floor where the stain ended. I looked over to where he was shining the light. The brown stains were everywhere, as described. But toward where one large swath of brown ended, there was an impression on the floor of the stuff, much clearer. The impression was of a sword, which had to have been drenched in blood. The sword-shaped stain didn't bother me. It's what was apparently holding it. An outstretched arm shape, and then two massive, wing-like stains on either side. It was a human's-like face profiled on the floor. Everything below the waist of the figure vanished in a larger stain across the floor. We each had an idea of what we were looking at, but we were too stunned at the sight. Chavez was the first to break the silence. Angels died here. I heard what Chavez said, but I don't think I was letting it sink in. Angels don't die. Angels don't exist, personally, but that's neither here nor there. If angels existed, I'd have seen a damn miracle or two around my house. My mother was a god nut, super religious, yet nothing saved her from her car accident or stopped my father's cancer. No, there's some rational explanation. I know there is. This imprint on the floor, sure, it could be human. Timothy said there was a massacre here 300 years ago. So, some guy died in a pool of his own blood, sword in hand, and the rest pooled around the shape of wings. No, couldn't be wings. This is some kind of Rorschach test. Someone sees a puffy cloud, Chavez sees wings because there's two giant 30-foot statues of angels flanking the center of the damn room. It's all in his head, that's all. I get a hold of myself. Chavez, Pete, get the scissor lift in here. Help out Bob and Mike, let's get this job over with. Sooner we start, sooner we're done. Chop chop. Pete gets motivated pretty quick, but Chavez is down on one knee, making a cross over his chest and saying the Lord's Prayer. I ignore him for now and get busy myself with the task at hand. The most difficult problem first. The statue on the left needs to be cleaned, and carefully, since it's a work of art. As Bob and I are guiding the scissor lift into place, I hear Timothy shouting at Chavez. I rush over. Now I feel like I'm on a normal work site. Hey, don't shout at my guys. What's going on? I intervene. Chavez has both of his hands up, stepping back from a huge structure of canvas and plywood making up a barricade to the right side of the entrance. I was just checking for more stains, Fred. Understanding Chavez is a new thing, but it's not entirely unwelcome. Timothy seems exasperated. I appreciate your due diligence, but this area is unstable. I cannot have anyone pass these barriers. I apologize. I should have made that clear. The main hall is where the cleaning must be done. Only the main hall. Any area that's barricaded is unsafe. I can't be held liable for the safety of your men if they wanted to wander past them. You heard the man. Help Bob with the scissor lift and get the pre-treating of the statue. Be careful, okay? Chavez nods and looks to Timothy. What saint is she? Timothy looks at the statue for a moment and gets kind of a faraway look in his eyes. Dina of Enoch. Chavez gives Timothy a thumbs up and says, I'll take good care of St. Dina. She will sparkle. He runs off to help Bob with the scissor lift, and a very confused Bob and Chavez make their way over the statue of Dina, I guess. Timothy is smiling a kind of odd smile. I almost break my no questions rule for a moment. I get my hard hat on and start shouting at Bob when I see he's not wearing a harness on the lift. Typical worksite stuff. Gotta remind the old-timers they're mortal to make sure the greenhorn of the group doesn't fuck something up. I'm happy to slide back into my routine. It wouldn't last, of course. About halfway through the day, we're just about done getting the bust of the statue clear. I gotta say, she's looking as good as new. Then we hear a huge bang. It sounds almost like someone took a large aluminum pipe and smashed it down on the marble. It echoes over our tools, and even the guys with ear protection on are taken back by the sound. I scream and shout to cut the equipment and tell Bob and Chavez to get off the scissor lift. Lord knows if something blew on the damn thing. It is a rental after all. I call Mike over to have a look. Mike slides under the lift as Bob and Chavez unhook their harnesses. Chavez looks to me. It wasn't the lift, boss. Well then, what the fuck was it? Chavez points to behind one of the barricades and I spot Timothy running towards it. I hear him mumble something like, "This can't be happening right now." I shout to him, "Hey Tim, do you need a hand?" Timothy shoots me a stern look and pretty practice officer tone commands us, "No one is to go beyond this point. Something may have collapsed. If there is an issue, I'll let you know. You stay there." That disappears behind a piece of plywood and canvas. I look to my guys and tell them to continue to inspect the scissor lift and then get back to work if everything is okay. God only knows what compelled me to walk toward the barricade at that moment. Morbid curiosity, a lapse in sound judgment, a mini stroke. Still not sure to this day, but man, this was at least the third or fourth stupidest thing I did that day. I get close enough to hear voices. There's a woman on the other side with Timothy. "I'm sorry, I truly am, but I'm afraid they're all gone." I hear Timothy say hush, but loud enough for me to hear. "I know your pilgrimage must have been arduous." The female voice sounds frantic and heartbroken. "But that can't be. Surely, this cannot be. Who would do such a thing? Who could? Was it an army?" It was just two people, unfortunately. He sounds almost guilty. They seemed to come in relative peace, but it was soon apparent that at least one of them had other ideas. All fought valiantly, but they couldn't be stopped. The woman's voice is trembling. "It was her, wasn't it? It was the daughter of Luke." The pressure washer kicked in and startled me while drowning out them both. Then I realized how close I was to the barricade trying to listen. I stepped back and made my way quickly to the rest of the group, keeping an eye out for the barricade that Timothy vanished behind. I didn't see Tim emerge till we were about done for the day. Statue clean. Timothy stops as he sees it, in reverence of some kind, I guess, looking over it silently. I walk over to him. So far, so good. We should be able to get some of the pre-treatment on the flooring, let it sit overnight, then we'll hit it hard tomorrow. Timothy just nods. "Your men do swift work." "That's what we do," I said proudly. Pete starts yelling for me across the room. I excuse myself and hustle over. "What's up?" I look where Pete is and he just points down. There's, for lack of a better word, a gash in the flooring. I need to explain why this floor is unusual. More so than just having blood all over it, and more than just shapes in said blood. You see, this floor doesn't have seams. It's a solid chunk of marble. I've seen some expensive walls and floors that have huge slabs. Sure, happens all of the time. If you have enough money, they'll tow a mountain to your house. But this was a mansion worth of floor that, for the life of me, I could not find a damn semen. Now the gash. It's almost 10 feet long, and at the center it looks like about 6 inches deep. Even with light, while I can see the bottom, it looks pretty dark on the inside of the gash. Pete looks at me. I'm going to ignore how this got here and just ask what we're supposed to do. The surface scratches are easy to buff out, but this isn't going to buff out easy. I call Mike over to have a look. He looks towards it and runs his hand over the edges of the opening, as well as the sides. It's all stained, of course. Jesus. He stands up and looks it over. That's one clean swipe. There's no cutting marks like you'd get if you were slicing into it with a floor cutter. So, he starts thinking. Can toss quickset in it to fill it, get it most of the way full anyway. And we could toss some top of the filler and polish it, but I think we'd do better with some resin. Make it look a bit more natural. It's up to the client though. This is going to cost extra. I look it over. 2-inch wide, 10-foot long, 6-inch deep slash in the marble. Certainly wasn't in the order. I looked to see Timothy approaching us. Just the man I needed to see. Timothy looks down and shakes his head. She did some serious damage. Don't ask, just don't. I keep saying in my head. We can fill it, make it look level, may even make it look pretty, but this isn't in the original quote, so I'd say another $4,000. I'd feel bad if this entire job didn't feel like some crazy funhouse. Timothy just nods. Fine, don't go crazy, just so it's level and no one trips over it. Mike heads out to get the materials we need, and I drag the sandblaster over. The gash is smooth, and it'll need to be rougher if the quickset is going to fill it right. Everyone gets to work while I blast into this thing. And then something black shoots straight up out of the gash and clatters somewhere behind me. This is why I wear a hard hat, folks. I cut the blaster and look around. It doesn't seem like anyone else heard anything. I look to what popped out of the gash and realize the gash is about 9 inches deeper. And I can still see it's solid marble. No subfloor, no dirt. Nothing is behind me but my closed toolbox. Whatever popped out must have shattered when it hit the ground, or all I saw was sand and blood popping out of the gash on the floor. I get my ear protection on and get back to prepping the gash to be filled. We pack up for the day. The floor is pre-treated, we have our tools and such inside, and I do a quick head count. And I noticed I'm short 1 Honduran. Oh yeah, mystery solved on that one. Chavez is from Honduras. I look around, then I spot him coming out from behind the barrier. Timothy walking behind him, hand on his shoulder. Shit. I run over. Chavez, what the hell? You were told not to... Sorry, boss. It won't happen again. He's very quiet and looks at Timothy. Please consider. I do not mind. That's dangerous, Jorge, Timothy says. Discuss it with me later, yes? Chavez nods and walks off. What was that about? I ask. Timothy walks past me. I thought you didn't ask questions. Not when it involves one of my guys. I clear my throat. Who, I'm sorry, disobeyed your instructions. I just nod dumbly as the red flags keep waving in my head. Just don't show up tomorrow. Take the money, leave the gear, go on your merry way. Granted, I'd only been paid about half the job, but still, it was a decent amount. We get packed up and the crew and I head out, packing my toolbox and other small items into the truck. I notice Timothy is locking up the doors of the place, and then escorted us to the gates. He closes them with him on the other side. I pull my truck up to the gate. Are you living on site? Timothy hesitates for a moment but answers, yes, I have a trailer out back. See you bright and early tomorrow then. Timothy just nods and waves me off. I never actually paid attention to where he went from there. I turn to Chavez in the truck and ask, so what did you and Timothy talk about? ¿Qué? Is all I get from Chavez. He has to be fucking with me. I put it out of my mind, drop Chavez off at his place, and he waves as always, Gracias, Senor Fred, and heads home. I head back home as well. At home, the kids are asleep, as is the wife. I got my toolbox in the garage. I pop it open as I've got to snap a few things in and out for the next day, specifically some mixing bits and the like. When I open my toolbox, however, something is inside of it that is most certainly not a tool I've ever used. I suddenly recognize it. It's the object that came out of the gash. My toolbox was open behind me. It must have closed when this thing slammed into it. The object is about 3 inches wide, deep in the center, 2 feet long, and about 3 inches thick at the top, tapering off to a point at the bottom. It's almost like a wedge. Then I realize it's probably blood that seeped into the gash and solidified over the years. I pick it up. It's light. Despite my attempts, I cannot break this thing. Looking at the object in the light for the first time, it almost looks like a blade. Either that or the shape of the gash is into the shape of one. The top is flat and the bottom comes to a point. Not sharp, but it could be. Light seems to penetrate through the edge of this thing, and it's tinted a deep red. The rest appears to be black. I didn't even know blood could become solid, but I guess if there's enough of it, it's possible. It's about 10 after 11 when I swear I hear 3 taps against my front door. As if I had a knocker or something. I don't, by the way. I leave the object in my toolbox, closing it and locking it, and I head to the front door. I'm not an idiot. I go to make sure to check the closet closest to the door, and I make sure my shotgun is loaded. It's after 11 p.m. What psycho goes around knocking at someone's door at this time of night? I open the door halfway and I'm greeted by an outstretched hand with a black ring on each finger, one of which was about to tap again on the door. The hand pulls back and clasps a wide-brimmed white hat, removing it from his head and lowering it to about chest level. One hand behind him as he stands a good 6'3", wearing a white duster and some sort of red tie over a black, very expensive-looking dress shirt. He has white-brimmed glasses on, yellowish eyes behind them, jet black hair that's well kept. As he speaks, it's almost like his voice doesn't match his body. His face isn't odd, but it doesn't stand out. His voice sounds like it almost comes out of an old cop movie. "Evening, young man. I understand you are working with an associate of mine, goes by Timothy." While client confidentiality isn't my cornerstone, keeping my business out of my personal life sure as shit is. Sorry, buddy. I'm gonna have to ask you to talk to me during business hours. His face falls slightly. Now this is important. Regarding that place you're working in. Timothy may have you misled. You see, he's using that place for his own means, not prosperity. He pulls out some kind of business card and twirls it between his fingers before handing it to me. I look it over. It just has a phone number on it. No other information. His other hand brings an unlit cigarette to his mouth. He inhales, smoke venting out of his nostrils. If you were to happen across something of note, I'd appreciate it if you could contact me. I'm not going to do that. I'm not the kind to take things from a work site. Normally, this is completely true. A shit-eating grin spreads across this guy's face, and his oddly perfect teeth glisten in the light of my porch. True. Be a shame if you take something that you don't understand, only to wind up dead. He cocks an eyebrow at me. Or worse. I had it with this creep on my porch. Listen, pal. Hit the bricks, you hear me? Get the fuck off my property, or I'll call the cops. I try cocking a shit-eating grin myself. Or worse. I don't think it works. He stands still. I can barely tell if he's breathing. I pump the shotgun behind the door. I know there's no point to this. I just eject a perfectly good shell. But I want him to hear that I've got a gun. It's pump action, and it's in my hand. His voice suddenly changes, or he drops the facade, and a raspy voice like that of a lifelong chain smoker slithers out of his throat. Not parting with it then, eh? Well, I'll have it one way or another for certain. The accent is hard to place. It's not quite Middle Eastern, but it's not like anything I've ever heard. I now pull the shotgun out and point it at his face. And now I'm done with you. Whoever the fuck you are, get out. He doesn't even flinch. He just grins more. A hissing chuckle is dripping out of his mouth. You are a fun one. Never once does your sort disappoint. Always resorting to the fire provided by Prometheus yet. He pauses, eyeing the barrel of the gun, never considering where it came from. I'm not sure where he pulled it from, but he suddenly crunches into an apple. He must have had it in his pocket. I suppose I'll have to reconsider. Maybe when you're asleep, like what happened to that hooker you cleaned up a few years back on Broadway. My heart skipped a beat. I don't talk about clients, and clients would never talk about me. And I never go into much detail either. I just restore shit. A man of your skills is bound to clean up a homicide or two, knowingly or not. He tilts his head back, looking at me down the barrel of the gun. Cleaning up the sin left behind by those less scrupulous than yourself. Oh, we've been watching you for some time now. And for some reason his eyes go wider. Red Fred. I click the safety off the shotgun and put my finger on the trigger. Get the fuck out of here. Right now. Another loud crunch of his apple, and he seems to mockingly throw his hands up, walking backwards, keeping eye contact with me with those yellow eyes. Very well. Another time then. You are a fun one, Red. He turns and walks off. I haven't moved the gun yet, still trained on him. Don't fucking call me Red, you. I realize I hadn't gotten this creep's name. The card he'd given me only had a phone number. Whatever your God-given name is. My mother always said that when she was mad. She'd shout into phones all the time when telemarketers would give her fake names and shit. What's your God-given name? So it's a force of habit I picked up. I only said it when I was really pissed at someone, and this guy's made me pretty livid. Bar none, the dumbest thing I apparently did all day. He stops dead on my walkway, his hands slowly go down at his side. Oh? His voice whispers as if he had just won a prize. You compel my God-given name? His head starts to turn to his right shoulder, but his shoulders aren't moving an inch. As I watch, I get ready to shoot. I swear if his head does a full 180-degree turn, I don't care what his name is. I'll just start shooting until he stops moving, and probably pump a few more rounds into him just to be sure. His head stops just shy of a complete turn. I can see both of his yellow eyes as he slowly placed his hat back on his head. He grins, and I swear I watch his pupils dilate till his eyes look almost certainly black with yellowish rings around them. You can tell Timothy my name too. He lets out another hissing laugh. I swear I can hear the gun shaking in my hand for some reason. It's Belial. I don't know why, but I feel the blood drain out of my face for a moment, and the whole area got a bit dimmer, as if something were draining the light out of it. I stagger slightly, but regain my footing and press the shotgun butt against my shoulder tightly, as if that's somehow going to help me. He turns away from me, and as he walks off, he wheezes out, "Don't forget to tell Timothy I dropped by." Another puff of smoke clouds around his head. And what I stopped by for. I pulled the gun back, shut the door, locked it, and shut the blinds. My heart was hammering in my chest as I checked the shells in my gun to ensure that I had it loaded. I clicked the safety back on and rush upstairs to my bedroom. My wife is fast asleep. As I sit on the edge of the bed, gun in hand, staring at my front door down the stairs, I swear I can hear something. 3 taps against my window at random times all night. Morning came and I haven't put the shotgun down yet. I'm still sitting at the end of my bed, checking the windows. The tapping seemed to have stopped somewhere around dawn. I hear my wife's alarm clock go off and the sound of her rising from her sleep. "Morning, honey," she mumbles, brunette hair a mess of frizz tangles. "Morning," I say simply, making sure that she's okay. She gets out of bed and heads to the bathroom. I hear the kid's alarm go off next, and my boys are heard roughhousing in their room. My wife, Sandy, comes out of the bathroom, toothbrush in hand. and is about to motion for me to go contain the wild animals that are my 15 and 13-year-old boys when she stops, stares at the shotgun in my hand, and she quietly spits out her toothpaste. "Fred, why the fuck are you holding the shotgun?" She looks me up and down with her soft brown eyes. "Are those the clothes you had on when you came home yesterday?" "Honey, I got visited by some guy who probably was not human in the least, and he threatened the family if I didn't return a red blade-like object that came from some mysterious excavation site," is the most truthful thing I wanted to say, but it also sounds batshit insane. The more I play the scene over in my head, the more I question my own sanity. "Fred?" She pokes my shoulder. Apparently, I was staring off into space while trying to think up a logical reason to her completely rational question. Someone was on the lawn last night and was banging on the door and wouldn't go away until I got the shotgun. Sandy cocks her hips and shoot me one of those emasculating wife stares. "So rather than call the cops, you reach for the shotgun." I cocked the shotgun to clear the ammo out before heading back down to the closet to put it and the shells back. I just wasn't sure if it was a prowler or kids. Sandy pokes her head out of the bathroom. "And speaking of, Colin, Trevor, shake a leg." I close the closet and see my boys bounding down the steps in various states of dress, dragging their backpacks and heading to the table. They start fighting over cereal and I quickly resolve it. Before a good scolding and getting them prepped for the bus, they finish up and are soon out the door with coats and sneakers on. My wife follows me down next, wearing her robe. "Don't you have that job today?" I nod, looking at the time. "Yeah, you're right. Time to get motivated." I do, and head out the door, give my wife a kiss, and I'm heading back to the site, making sure my toolbox is with me. Same as the first morning, Timothy is there at the gate. He undoes the chain and we all head into the mansion again. He props open the door and the crew heads in. I get business squared away first. Chavez and Pete on the scissor lift to finish the few touches on the walls, while Bob and Mike get mixing the quick set to fill in the gash on the floor. They also work on making sure there's a barrier between the gash and the rest of the work area so we can work on the rest of the flooring. During this prep work, I notice Mike eyeing the doorway. "Mike, you taking in the scenery?" Mike points to the roof on the outside. Steepled. He leans in the doorway, shining a light up at the ceiling. Flat. I look to Mike. "Attic." Mike pulls out a laser measure. Steeple peak is at 53 feet. He leans in. Ceiling is at 50 feet. He leans out again. Low point of the steeple is at 44 feet. He leans back in. Flat ceiling is 50 feet. I grumble a bit. "Oh, our last day here, Mike. Get the job done. That thing is probably on the fritz." "My eyes aren't on the fritz, Fred." "Fuck your eyes." I see Bob looking at the same thing as Mike. "Bob, do something." Bob seems a bit startled but manages to compose himself and get back to setting up tools. I walk past the crew as they prep and pop open my toolbox. I find the strange object or artifact or whatever out of my toolbox and head toward Timothy. Timothy is observing Chavez and Pete, then he spots me coming. "This wound up in my toolbox," I said, holding the object out in front of me. Timothy looks it over without touching it, then looks at me for a solid minute. "This came from here?" I nod. "From inside the gash in the floor." Timothy holds his right hand over the thing for a moment, then he starts guiding his hand back and forth slowly. I have no clue what he's doing. I'm about to ask, but as I look up, I notice his eyes seem a bit more intense blue than they were before. Significantly, his right eye. Timothy stops suddenly and grabs the thing with his right hand and pulls it hard out of my grip. "Thanks for returning this." He turns it over in his hand again. His eyes seem to be a normal shade of blue again. "It's a very rare find." "That's what your associate said." I was hoping to fish some info. If this Belial guy knows Timothy, then Timothy should know him. "Associate?" He looked at me quizzically. I nod. "Yeah, a tall guy, kind of yellow eyes and way too perfect teeth?" Timothy seems completely confused. "I'm afraid I don't know anyone like that. All my associates are here." I figured it was time to stop trying to get him to spill the beans and just come right out and say it. "Listen, this guy shows up last night. Tell me he wants that thing, and then tells me your name is Belial and that you know him." Timothy's face goes slightly pale. "You're certain he said Belial?" I just nod. Timothy just looks to the object and then walks to the doors. Sorry for this, but I hope you have everything you need inside, and he shuts the doors. I'm a bit dumbfounded at this point. I thought you were concerned about ventilation. Timothy walks right past me toward the barricade. Ventilation is the least of your worries at the moment. I turn around and the entire crew is dead silent. Not sure what to do, we hear some banging, a few doors closing, and then some rustling past the barricade. I just come out and say it. We have this one last day to get the floor cleaned, get the gash, get the smaller scrapes and the holes plugged. Move it, now. Then we can get the fuck out of here. The crew seems pretty much on board, and the sounds of work overpower anything else. Almost a half hour since Timothy left, I suddenly feel a hand on my shoulder and I spin around out of sheer instinct. A small round bottle is shoved into my hands. That's for you, Timothy says as he hands bottles to the rest of the crew. I look and see it's just a small round glass bottle with a long spout at the top of the cap. Timothy doesn't have the object in question any longer, and he now heads towards the barrier again. As he passes me, I grab him. I need at least a "what the fuck is this" explanation and a "who the fuck is that" for this Belial guy. I glare at him. That, Timothy says as he points to the bottle, is protection from Belial. That's half my question, Timothy. Who the fuck is Belial? I reiterate. He looks to the angelic statue, and I turn to see the large statue of Saint Dina. He's her opposite. Before he can elaborate, he's back behind the barrier. Just finish up the day and get the fuck out, is all I can think. I grab the pressure washer and start working alongside my guys to get things rolling. It's the end of the day, and it's cleanup time. Timothy opens up the doors to check outside for something, and we all start loading up the trucks. Timothy looks around, seemingly satisfied. This is quite excellent work, Fred. Thank you. I nod, hoping we can finish up shortly. The gash in the floor is fully repaired. It will take 24 hours to cure, but you can walk across it without much issue. We cleaned up the main hall here, got the walls, statues, ceilings, and of course, flooring squared away. And the amphitheater, Chavez says. He and Pete seem to be pulling equipment from the left side of the room. Pete's face is pretty pale as he walks by, but I stop and ask him regardless. Amphitheater? Pete looks and just shakes his head. I sigh. Chavez, that wasn't in the order. Timothy chimes in. How did you get into the amphitheater? I'm never going to get out of this place, am I? So close, yet so far. Chavez happily shows us down the left-handed side of the hall and clicks on the lights. A pair of massive 50-foot doors stand right in front of us and reach from floor to ceiling. The ceiling looks like it tapers to a dome. It's not so much that there's a pair of massive 50-foot double doors right in front of us that are almost 20 feet wide. It's what's on the damn things that bother me. Carved into the marble are pictures of armor-clad angels with feathery wings. Under their feet are various horrible-looking creatures. A few of the angels stand over said defeated creatures with spears shoved in them. Others are in the process of smiting them. As the doors go up, the carvings get weirder. Not just feathery angels, but these other winged humanoid things. They look like lizards with wings. Stranger still, at the very top of these doors is a huge lizard-like figure. Massive bat-like wings spread out, holding a shield with a cross on it. And a huge spear. It's hard to see fully, but the massive doors seem to meet, or at least have to meet, in the middle where his face would be. If you could call it a face. It was mostly a lizard head with horns over a long snake-like neck. Chavez takes a knee in front of the door and starts reciting God's prayer. One of them clicks open. Voice-activated doors? I ask, hoping there's some kind of rational explanation and wondering why we haven't left yet. Chavez gets up and opens the door enough to walk in. He drags one of the lamps in and powers it up, motioning for us to come in. We found this door here, and Pete and I cleaned it up. It was easier than the rest. The floor here is different. I look down and, thank God, there's a seam. I finally found a seam in this place. But the seam is from marble to granite, and as I walk in, it's pretty clear that, oddly, everything is made of granite in this room. Stacking up into the darkness, so high I couldn't even tell, were chairs. These chairs were large, stone chairs. They all culminated around a central chair. Well, a chair is an understatement. This was a throne. The chairs all surrounding the stage. We found ourselves in a huge crescent. I turned to Timothy, whose gaze was transfixed on the central throne. That faraway look again in his eyes. Chavez was, again, the only one to speak. Saint Dina. Timothy nods and leaves the room. I did not know how those doors opened. Thank you, Chavez. I clicked the lights off and pulled the lights out, making sure everyone was out of the perfectly dark room. Good work, guys. Now, let's get packed. I'm now overly invested in getting out of here as fast as possible. Pete leans over to me, whispering, "The door outside and the amphitheater. They're on the same wall, but there's no structure on the outside that could fit that." I noticed this as well, and as we walk outside the mansion, then back inside, Pete. Yeah, don't think about it. Pete just frowns at me. I guess that's the best bet. I give a final examination of the place before we kill the last of the lights, and I do have to say the place is looking nice. The white marble floor is polished to the point where even I can see my reflection. The gash is sealed up nice and neat and just looks like a vein in the marble. Everything is looking perfect inside. The walls, the ceiling, and the floor. I give a little nod to the statue of Saint Dina and head out the door as the last of the lights are taken out. I do my head count once again, and again, I'm short a Honduran. I walk back inside and find Chavez kneeling in front of the statue of Saint Dina. The only light from the setting sun reflecting off the floor to light the room softly. "Chavez, end of the day. Let's go." "I'm staying," he says simply, and I notice that the bottle that Timothy had handed him is empty. "Did you drink that?" I said, a bit shocked. "Do you even know what that is, Chavez?" "God's blessing." Chavez stands up and looks, for lack of a better word, happy, like a man without a care in the world. "I'm not just leaving you here, Chavez. The client isn't going to like you hanging around here." Timothy chimes in, walking back from behind the barricade again. Actually, Chavez agreed to help me out with a few things going forward. I turn to Timothy. "You ever think I might not want to lose a member of my crew?" Chavez speaks up. "Mr. Fred, it's okay. I want to stay here. I want to help Timothy interrupts him. He volunteered. It was hard to say no to him. I give Chavez a look. He just smiles and extends his hand. "Nice working with you, Fred." I ignore it. "Get your head straight. I'm your ride." "I'm staying, Fred." I turn and shout, "Chavez, I'm not staying here any longer. I'm out. Done. Finished." I stop for a second. I didn't say finished. I said finito. But for some reason, it came out as English. I'm 100% done with this place, okay? I'm out. Job's done. You want to stay? Enjoy. I head towards my truck and look to my toolbox to ensure nothing else is in there that shouldn't be. I close it and out I go. As I head out the doors, Timothy starts to close them behind us, him and Chavez still inside. Timothy looks to me before he closes the doors. "There's the remainder of the payment in your truck. Everything we discussed. I cannot fully express my gratitude." He shuts the door and we load up. I check the truck and there's an envelope with the second half of the payment. I'm pretty shocked and I count the bills out a few times. I'm up a good 10 grand. I've heard of getting a tip, but this was a bit overkill. I know one pair of kids whose college fund is going to be in a good place after all this. At home, I'm doing the husband thing, cleaning up the dishes from the wife's dinner. Sandy and the boys are asleep, and that's when I hear a crash in the garage. I run to the closet and grab the shotgun and fill it with a few shells before I rush in. I'm kind of expecting him at this point. My toolbox and tools are strewn about all over the floor. I see my garage door is open slightly, and suddenly something small and glass-like hits me in the face. I look down to see what looks like a chunk of that object that was in my toolbox, about the size of a $50, land on the floor. "This is but a pittance, Red Fred." I turn to see the voice, and all I see are glowing yellow eyes in the darkness. "Not nearly what I need." I pull the gun and go to shoot, but I feel a tug against my entire body, as if someone grabbed onto my sweatshirt from the front and pulled it downward. I barely take a step forward, but it's enough to get me to point the gun down at the floor. I look up as Belial's hand is dropping from being in midair, steam rising off the black rings of his fingers. Weak, but not this weak though. After another hissing laugh, he off you protection, didn't he? How noble. Before I can take aim, a tool shoots off the workbench and smacks right into my shotgun, which lands a few feet from me. I lunge for it, but it suddenly leaps off the floor and into Belial's hand. Belial takes the shotgun and places it against his shoulder, looking down at me, as if a little bauble could do anything against me. I try to get up, but he places his foot on my shoulder. I can't move. You've done something very foolish, Red Fred. He is soon crouching down onto his haunches over me. You've hidden the only thing that can help me move up from a puppeteer to God. The shotgun barrel now slides under my chin as I see Belial's face illuminated by the light coming from the doorway. But there is hope for you yet. I'm shaking at this point. I'm not sure how the tables turn so fast. You can fix your mistake, and in return, I'll spare you and your family's lives. His voice wheezes, but not as much as it did before. He somehow seems stronger. Despite how I look, I've done quite a bit to exist in this world. Possessions, normally a lesser demon's game, but this discovery of the sanguine amber. He cocks the shotgun. I could not resist. I'm sweating and slowly trying to get to my feet. I'm on my hands and knees by the time I feel the barrel at the back of my head. Now, this is your next course of action. You will leave here right away and retrieve for me the sanguine amber you found. You will bring it back here and give it to me. In return, you'll be at my side rather than in my path. I swear I can hear his grin somehow. Nod if you understand. I just nod. What else could I do? If you do not bring me the amber, if you do not return home, or if you somehow reach out to Timothy for aid, I will go upstairs and make sure your children watch as I violate your wife in every way you can and cannot imagine. I clench my fists. If you lay a hand on her, I hear the safety slide off. Bleed on me? I relax and I hear the safety slide back as the gun clatters to the floor. You're on the clock, Freddy. I look up and the garage is clean. The door isn't open. There isn't even a sign that I had dropped the shotgun, as it's sitting neatly on my workbench. I get to my feet, shaking, and I turn to see a figure behind me, causing me to shout in fear. Sandy is behind me and she punches me in the shoulder. Jesus, it's just me. Why are you so jumpy, Fred? What's going on? I rub my shoulder where she nailed me, and I try to figure out how to best protect one's family from someone who's clearly not of this world. That's when I remembered Timothy had handed me at the worksite, and I rushed to my closet to find my coat. Were you on the phone? I thought I heard you talking to someone, Sandy asks. I pull the bottle out of my coat and turn to her, pressing the bottle into her hands. Sandy, I know this is going to sound batshit nuts, but I need you to drink this and share it with the boys, okay? They're asleep, Fred, she says curtly and looks into the bottle and raises an eyebrow. This isn't some point where you poison us and run off to Malibu with some bimbo, is it? I grabbed her shoulders, looking her dead in the eye. I'm asking you to trust me. Just drink half the bottle, split the rest with the kids, okay? I need you to do that for me right now. Just drink half. Sandy is clearly worried, but now she's undone the cap of the bottle. Okay, Fred, okay. Calm down. She takes a swig, then another until the bottle is half empty, then caps it. So, I drank it. What? She trails off and suddenly closes her eyes, opening them again and looking right into my eyes. Oh wow, that's probably the best water I've ever drank. I nod. Make sure you give it to the boys, okay? I left something at the worksite. I need to go get it. Sandy just nods. I love you, Fred. I let go of her shoulders. I love you too. Just make sure the kids drink that and keep the doors locked, okay? Don't let anyone inside. Sandy nods again. Okay, Fred, be careful. She walks up the stairs and waves, smiling serenely as I rush out the door. I lock it and make my way to my truck. In retrospect, I should have kissed her. I was driving swiftly, fast enough to be a little worried, but not fast enough to get pulled over. I got to the gate of the worksite in roughly an hour, which was pretty good time from my house. I saw the gate wasn't chained anymore, which seemed odd because Timothy had to undo the chain every time. Did he never leave the mansion after they closed the doors? I drove down the driveway and hit my brights, knowing it might be dark in the main hallway. I ran to the doors. "Timothy, open up!" I slammed my fist on the door. "Damn it, Timothy! Open the damn door!" I looked to see there's no padlock on the door and jostled the old doorknob, swinging the doors open. "Chavez! Timothy!" I shout into an empty room, expecting an echo, but I hear no such sound. I'm hit with a musty scent, the smell of rotting wood and mildewed fabric. I look around, pulling out a flashlight. The boards are letting in light in front of me. There are no statues, no marble floor, just a set of collapsed staircase and the rotting subfloor with a few ripped and torn rugs and graffiti. I take a step outside and confirm it's the same place, and then peek back inside. The barricades are gone, the marble ceilings, the walls, the seamless floor, as if it was never there. I run through the ruins of this ancient mansion. This mansion is mundane, old, and too ruined to fix. Should be knocked down. I try a door or two, each opening up to rotting room after rotting room. I eventually became overwhelmed with the fungus in the air, and I stumbled out the door, falling to my knees near my car. As I tried to catch my breath, I tried to figure out what the hell was going on. I turned to look at the old mansion, and I could only think of one thing. The site we were working on was gone, or was never here in the first place, and the amber was gone with it. Wow, this is really just a fantastic story. And this is just the first 3 parts, guys. If you want to stick around for the last 2, it gets even better. Make sure you go look up the author Zithero on Reddit. This guy is a very, very, very good author, and I'm very happy he let me do this story. Make sure you like and subscribe, and we'll be back here for the next one in a day or 2, guys. Good night.